Welcome to another episode out of the Blank Podcast. And a bomb has gone off, and I have the guy who has been located on the scene, and his name is John.
It is me.
How are you doing, John?
Doing great, man. How about yourself?
Are you recovering from that incident?
As best as I could. That gamma radiation's crazy.
I know, right? See, because what interests me, we met through a fellow friend, Y
Yeah, we
Whiskey. I'll give him
have.
a shout out, Ian. He was
Yep.
like, "This guy is your shit." I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "He's into everything that you're interested in, conspiracy talk." I'm like, first of all, we can all agree conspiracies are just a way of saying it hasn't been revealed to us yet. Do I believe we're on a flat Earth? No. But I do believe that the government's doing some really shady stuff that now we're not allowed to talk about.
And I think it's interesting that you brought that up too, is our government has done so much to us that's come out that hasn't got a lot of light too. So, it's all about staging the moon landing and all this. It's about, testing radiation over the city of St. Louis that a lot of people didn't know about, that army planes were actually, spraying bad things on the city of that because it was so poor back in the day.
Or San
Um,
Francisco, Operation Sea Spray, a lot of people don't know about, where we released a chemical in the air. And the weird thing,
mhm,
it's like people were experiencing like flu-like symptoms and stuff like that. A couple people went to the hospital and they were like, well, it
mhm.
could be anything. It couldn't be this the chemical we sprayed over the city during the fog or and all this stuff. I'm like, hang on a second. Like, if the shoe fits, this is like a scene from OJ's Crime where like he's trying on the glove. He's like, these gloves don't fit. I'm just like, hang on a second. Actually, put your hand in there.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's I think it's just more than, oh, we're talking about aliens again and this and that. It's just kind of, it was the part of my purpose of my podcast is just question everything, and the name it's in itself. So I mean, when I take everything at its word, I think there's always a lot more than what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Um,
when you experience something in your life and then later down the road you go and retell the tale. You add a few things onto it. Like that one
you're
time
exactly right.
I broke my arm. Well, when I broke my arm, the way it happened was I fell off a trampoline with no net and I broke it. And then I army
Yeah.
crawled all the way to my house. That was like a good 2 streets away while my brother kicked me, telling me I was faking it. When I tell the story
Yeah.
now, I tell it in that way, but I'm like, I did like a triple backflip off the trampoline and I landed on my arm and it cracked into my shoulder blade. When it's like, no, it didn't. No, it didn't.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. So I had to bring this up too. It's funny that you interviewed a Power Ranger
We say
because
conversation.
my wife is actually friends. It's my wife went to school with an actual blue Power Ranger too. So it's a pretty small world that we've come in contact, both of us, with blue Power Rangers in our life.
It's like
Not
you've
the
been
same guy.
touched
There's a
by
different
God,
guy.
though.
I'm not going to reveal his name.
It's like you've been touched by
He
God
he
once you've
was.
talked to a Power Ranger.
It's pretty cool. I was like, oh man, and obviously it's her friend, and um, it's her her friend's brother that they all went to high school and stuff like that, and they've got to meet a couple of times. But it's
It's like when my
just
dad
a
told me
unique.
that he dated the girl from the girl who's related to Mike Rowe, who does Dirty Jobs. He dated his sister, or his
That's
sister,
awesome.
and I'm like, bro, can I
Really.
get Mike Rowe on the podcast? He goes, Robbie, that was 30 years ago. I was like, oh, do statues of limitations happen when it comes to dating somebody?
So I thought that was kind of cool. It was interesting. I was like, oh man, we look blue. That's it, man. I don't know if blue is my favorite or not. I think Tommy was my favorite with the Mighty Morphin, but
I liked all of them, and then when they confused me with who the girl was, like they
well,
changed the colors where the suits don't match. I guess, oh, that's not Pink Ranger's not a girl anymore; it's a guy. It's like, so who am I supposed to be getting aroused to? Now I'm confused.
well, maybe you shouldn't be getting aroused at all with Power Rangers. It's all about, kicking butt and taking names, man.
Let me tell you something. If you don't get aroused to watching Power Rangers, there might be something wrong with you. well,
Awesome.
out of all the things you've kind of like podcast about, things you question, you say you question things. What's the one thing you find that you question the most?
Um, man, I don't think it's either questioning everything. It's more of like a discovery, and I don't think it's me personally, because the purpose of my podcast, to believe it or not, was I wanted to be more like a coast to coast AM. Like I wanted to be Art Bell. Are you familiar with Art Bell and Coast to Coast?
No, I might be too young.
Man, all right. So it was an old AM station, and he used to broadcast. I mean, he had sister stations and all this, but he used to broadcast coast to coast. And I used to sit there and listen to this guy, Art Bell, and he was fantastic. And people used to sit there and call him up and just tell him the craziest things. And he would sit there and just believe every one of them, sit down and actually take the time and listen to every one of them. And that's kind of what I wanted my format to be like. I always let the guests choose the topic, and I want to listen to what they have to say,
Yeah, it's
because that
understanding the perspective. It's going to only enhance your own.
it's exactly right. And I thought that man was a genius. And Coast to Coast AM is still going on. Someone else does it now, but Art Bell was like, he was my jam. And I would always listen to him. I used to work retail. So getting off late, like kick him on and like just listen to the craziness. But it's not, and who's to say that it's crazy anyway? It's, if someone says something and we particularly don't agree with it, doesn't mean they'll make them crazy or any less intelligent or anything like that. you know if they're going to say this out in public and this, they truly believe it, and that's it's kind of what I wanted to know. Like,
I learned
I
that
just
when
wanted to
the
know what
first
other people had to.
I learned that when the first Alex Jones podcast on Joe Rogan came out, because I was like listening to it and I was just listening to it over and over again, where I was like, who is this guy? I never even heard of Alex Jones. And there's all this stuff
Oh
about him.
yeah.
So I started listening and I'm like, I'm going to pause every time he goes on a rant and I'm going to see what whatever he's talking about is. So after listening to it so many times, I see his brain is a lot like mine when it comes to, we have all these different avenues to go down to. Like I have ADHD, so I'm constantly hopping into different
Yeah.
examples and everything. So I'm like, let me pause this. I learned about Operation Paperclip. I learned about everything that I couldn't
Hmm.
even think would be possible. So eventually I was like, I just need to start understanding why someone's thinking this way and hear them out on it. So I had a buddy come on, Robert Solomon from This Uncanny Earth. He's been on a
Okay.
few times, but he talked about how he thinks we came from Mars. And I'm sitting there like, mother, came from Mars. All right, what's your thing for it? He goes, you know how the moon has all those craters on it? Well, all those craters are asteroid impacts. Basically, imagine if one of those asteroids hit Mars and the dust particles flew off, and we evolved from those dust particles when it entered Earth's atmosphere. And I'm like, that actually could be, that has some steam to it. It's nothing that's really unbelievable. I mean, they just found water on the
Yeah.
moon. It's like, I can get down with it. So then now when I hear people toss stuff out like that, like I called, and Ian gives me shit for it, and I will tell him to his face that, hey, this is true. I called it. I joked around saying that if they made a cure for the coronavirus, the vaccine, I'm going to wait 6 months. It makes sense to wait a little bit and see what happens, because it might be like I Am Legend. And then that was months ago, and then we got a vaccine. Now 1/3 of people are suffering from severe neurological issues. And I'm like, bruh, I'm just saying is that it doesn't mean I'm right. It means the fact of the government does a lot of stuff, and a lot of the times it's very sketchy and shady, but a lot of stuff is cutting corners. And to think that we're trying to think of something to recover from something that's so dangerous right now that's keeping us all in our homes, it would make sense there's a couple slip ups.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to stop you there too, because vaccines, they do everything, but they make adults. You know what I mean? So when I'm about to say, it's that I'm full. I vaccinate my kids. I'm vaccinated. I want everyone to be vaccinated, because no need to have polio in 2020.
Yeah.
But
Aren't you afraid though? Like if you listen to the new Alex Jones on Joe Rogan, he talks about how his grandmom actually got paralyzed from the polio vaccine, that they told them that he actually got injected with a live version of the virus, which is that's what the vaccine is. It's a like a dumbed down version of the. I don't think like I'm not anti-vax. I'm not. I've
yeah.
gotten all my shots too, but when it comes to like Ron Funches, his kid
All
is
right, but
mentally
I'm gonna stop you there with Alex Jones' grandma. Getting this. How old is she?
probably when she got the vaccine, maybe in her 60s, but now she's dead. She's like was 94. I think she
You,
died
you
at
see what I'm
94.
saying? So I mean, it's one of the things that, like, it's trial and error. I mean, the people who make these vaccines are human. They don't know what's going to go on. They're just trying to squash something in its place so we can live a better life, I think.
I look at it like
And
if you're choosing a diet, like each person's different, and some people
mm-hmm,
might react. Like, let's say 90% of the population does well with the vaccine, and then there's that
mm-hmm,
small population that doesn't. But like
exactly right.
watching the CNN thing where they interviewed Bill Gates, which is, I guess, I found out why everyone hates him, is because he was like, let's let the people that are vulnerable to it get it first, the old and already about to die. And I'm like, but then if they take it and let's say they're gonna die the next day from something else, then that gets chalked up to the vaccine being crap. Like you got to
Yeah,
understand, like it's not a good portion control here.
you're exactly right. And then, the numbers already, with this virus, you know what I mean? They've already come out. John Hopkins and a lot of other doctors come out and say, hey, we're putting on these things because we're getting funding because no one's coming in our hospital. So, the true numbers, especially like, I refuse to believe that the numbers in China are as small as they were. I mean, granted, they did have militarized, you know, quarantine. Like people would go out there, and soldiers will question you why you're out, with guns. So I mean,
I
who
think
knows what to believe, and that leaves it up to everybody else to decipher what they really truly believe,
that's where I started
how
kind of
serious they should take it.
where I
But
kind of find at fault with Bill Gates was the fact of how like much he acted like he knew what he was talking about, and I'm like, I don't think anybody knows exactly what they're talking about. I believe this life is so fucking miraculous and so crazy that we're all just kind of just like on the cusp of just trying to survive. Like we're really just trying to
hmm
figure everything out. Like there's so much stuff that I learned in like the past year and a half alone just from podcasting and doing my own research into government projects and stuff. And I'll keep
hmm
referencing this, but the new episode I told you with Alex Jones, he brought out the thing about climate change being like this fake thing. And I'm like, hang on a second. I've been fighting climate change, saying we need to start taking care of our earth for the longest time. And he starts saying that it's raising our carbon dioxide levels,
well,
which
it's
is,
true. That's a reason why I don't own an electric car. Because I mean, here where I live, if I were to plug in a Tesla or anything else, it's powered by coal.
yeah,
So I mean, you're putting carbon in there one way or another. So I mean, he's actually true. I mean, that's why I don't. And that was before this podcast. I mean, I already knew that we got our power from coal. So I was just like, well, having an electric car, you're not really putting that much of you're not really smaller your footprint. You know what I mean? Because you're still the coal power plant's working double time to charge this giant car battery.
that's
Already
what
you may not be putting it in there from your exhaust, but I
that
mean,
that's what I'm saying. There's people out there that hearing that was a brand new thing. Like for me, that was a brand new thing. And then you go and say something like I told someone the other day. I was telling them like, did you hear about the stuff that came out about like Biden's laptop situation? They're like, that's fake news. You got to check your sources. I'm like, no, it's like everywhere. Like
I didn't hear
it's
about that. What was what's on
oh
his
my god.
laptop?
If this is the episode that gets pulled down from Twitter, I'll be pissed. It's so Hunter Biden.
And
They
this is all allegedly. Let's put it that way, so you don't get pulled
Well,
down.
I guess okay, even though it's all came out as real. And the state it happened in the state that's right next to me. So, but and he apparently their family like flies privately from like California to Delaware and all this stuff. Well, he brought his
hmm
laptop into Delaware and dropped
hmm
off his laptop at a repair shop. When you drop off something at a repair shop, they call you, and if you don't answer and you don't come back to pick it up, what they
Oh
do
yeah,
is they
yeah.
wipe it. So they checked the
Yeah, I heard
thing and they
about
saw
that.
all the dirty images of young kids on there. And
hmm
now there's this whole thing, like even apparently the old house they used to live in, they found their daughter's journal, and the journal was all these like acts of like he would shower with like as teenagers they would shower with their father Joe Biden and like all this
hmm
stuff. And I'm just like, oh my god, like it's everywhere now, and like you don't know what to believe because everything can get manipulated and the way video editing and all this stuff is. And I'm just looking at it like, can we just like try and
And
find out what the hell we're doing in America, please? Like I'm more concerned at the fact that we have like
yeah, I mean,
great
even the laptop thing. I mean, I heard about that, and like, who's to say that this guy was even I don't know. I took it with a grain of salt. Unless it's put in front of me, I take it with a grain of salt because there's so much misinformation and disinformation and actual a little bit of information out there. I just kind of take everything with a grain of salt. I mean, I feel like it's up to you to figure out what you believe. You know what I mean? And I mean, I know for a fact that I mean, like, I kind of already had my mind made up in this election. I'm like, I listen, dude. I knew 4 years ago. I'm like, I
I
can't keep
just
doing
wish they
this.
would open up about a lot of this shit. Like just be honest
Exactly.
about your shit. Like, I
Yep.
think that's why Benjamin Franklin never wanted to be president, was because he had bodies in his basement that he was practicing on. Like, he was taking corpses and stuff and experimenting on them in his basement. I was like,
Hmm.
that makes sense why he wouldn't want to be president. Why would you want that to get out? But hiding the shit is when people get pissed. This
Yep.
time last year, everyone was trying to storm Area 51, and now we've totally fucking forgot about that. So I'm like, hang on a second. Let's start trying to figure out, like, if you were just being honest, like, hey, here's Area 51, okay? I will give you 10, or you give me $10. I'll let you in the door and you get to see for yourself and see why we were hiding this from you. But don't try and
Hmm.
discredit people and do all this mind media manipulation stuff that twists people's heads, because that's when you lead into like MK Ultra shit. And people out there don't even believe that. I'm like, hold on a second. It's on
You
the
could actually,
CIA
yeah, you can
website.
look on the CIA website. That's where I got all my stuff from. I'm like, it's there. You know
It's
what I mean?
redacted a lot, but it's there.
It is right there. But I mean, it came out. I mean, it's there. But I mean, even like, I don't know. I feel like I'll put it to you this way: with our MK Ultra podcast with Ian, I mean, it's so manipulated and it's so whitewashed and watered down and this and that. Like it went from, oh, let's try to control mind with drugs and this and that, to, you know, everyone's got a cell phone. Let's just blast people with all this information, and whether it's right or wrong, and there you go. The the truth is in there. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you kind of have to just read through the lines and read between the lines and to figure out, what the actual truth is. Now with Alex Jones, I've been following Alex Jones since 2000. I've been going in the rabbit hole for a long time, and and sometimes, I mean, the guy hits the nail on its head, and then the other time he completely misses it, it hits his thumb. So I mean, it's one of those things. Even listening to him, like, come on, man, like, why do you say things without actually hard proof?
Yeah, that's when
You know what I
like
mean?
even in that Joe Rogan podcast, he was asking him to bring up his sources and he kept going off on the other things. It's like, all right,
It's
so
exactly right.
you're now paraphrasing, and this is the issue that we have here, is why you get to be so
Hmm.
unbelievable. You can't just
And
paraphrase something as serious as this. Like, it's like saying, like, we have, human lives at risk. If you start fledging numbers, you start adding things that sound better or sound more to your point, people want to see the proof to that. And if you can't show the proof, then you're
hmm
immediately going to be, everything's tossed out the window.
hmm I 110% agree with you. And like that was my whole thing. Like, everyone looks at, I mean, I don't do podcasts all the time. My wife does a lot more. Shout out to So This Is Me Trying podcast. She's amazing. If everyone can check her out. But
That's funny.
I
I was
mean,
just checking out the page of hers and I was like, wait, so they're a podcast couple? They don't do it together, though. That's interesting.
it's yeah, I we do a lot of we share a lot of it, you know what I mean? But we have our own interest, and that's that's for her to shine, you know what I mean? It's she has her own platform and things like this, and I'm on it all the time. So it's not like, we're not doing it together, and she's
Yeah,
on mine all
separate
the time.
projects. That's important.
That's exactly right. You know what I mean? And that's her stage, and this is my stage, and she does a lot better of a job than I do. Because I just talk about weird shit all the time. Like, but she actually talks about, really cool and funny things. So I mean, I can't say enough about her podcasting. But um, when it comes to mine, I'm just like, let's just figure it out. I wish more people would come on it, because I'm still like infant crawling on it. But I wish somebody would have the guts and be like, you know, I want to talk about something weird. Like, I'm all ears, man. Like, let's listen. Like,
Well,
I
I
would like
want to
to have
hear.
random people I don't know on it. You know what I mean? Like,
I
that's the art of it.
I
Because
want to hear some stuff that I don't know. You got a questionable podcast. I want to know what's questionable about it.
that's exactly right. Come on, I know a lot of people have weird shit that's happened to them. I mean, or things that they don't, oh, well, let's talk about this. I would love to have that. I'm all ears, man, because nothing's weird to me. I mean, this is 2020, man.
Can't
There's
get any.
nothing weird anymore.
Hasn't got any weird. I posted a tweet. I was like, 2020 is made up and the points don't matter. Just like, whose line is it anyway?
Yeah, it's exactly right, man. We're just picking names out of a hat. I mean,
Well, give me a topic that you find that you focused on that you really enjoyed, like one that really has got your mind going.
I really see. I picked Chernobyl myself. I've always been into those, and it wasn't about the true accident itself. It's the fact that, like, if you actually delve deep into the actual Chernobyl event, it's the USSR downplaying it. You know what I mean? Until they're like, until the rest of the world like twisted their arm. Is like, how bad is this? How bad is it? How, I mean, seriously, how bad is this? You know, and they're
Well,
like,
it's a
no,
place
no, you
nobody
know,
can live on anymore. It's like, did you
it's
ever see that
exactly right.
that
So
fucking
it's
Chernobyl movie
crazy.
came out? I was like, that's one place I don't want to visit, is a place where you literally are going to get cancer by staying there, like radiation. Like, how much of that is like political? Like, is it like, don't go there because they don't want you to uncover anything? Or is it actually
Well,
truth? Like,
you can actually go there. It's considered a dark tourism hotspot, and they cleaned it up enough where you can safely visit and then have kids the next day. So I mean, you know, they did clean up a lot of their mess.
so it's more dangerous than a hot, or no, it's less dangerous than a hot tub. Like, I can't sit in a hot tub or it could affect me having kids.
Well, you can't touch certain things, but you can go and visit and stuff like that. But you know, like the did you ever watch the mini series on HBO with Chernobyl?
I
Like
haven't
it's
really seen anything but that scary movie they had on HBO or on demand where the people stayed there and they all got murdered.
you really, if you have no idea about it, a good introduction to it's the mini series, and they hit a lot of the nails on the head. A lot of it's, you know, the Hollywood theatrics of this, but a lot of it's very, 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 very true. I mean, that's the best one I've seen so far with documentary wise on it. And it's a 5-part mini series, but
So,
it's
what was
fantastic.
the like main point of Chernobyl? Like, can you give me the rundown of the incident? Because I just want to make sure I'm not like thinking. Because I all I've heard it was like just a nuclear meltdown. Basically, a reactor just exploded and then caused all these people to evacuate, like leave everything, all their belongings, and run out of this place. But is that the full scoop to it?
That it was the fact that like the Soviet had bunch of faulty reactors that they actually knew going into it that certain situations could cause this reactor to explode, and they had what, 8 of them throughout the Soviet Union, of these known faulty reactors that if you cut down the power all the and you hit the emergency button, the type of rods that they had graphite tips to it, and then with all the xenon and everything else like not working, these graphite tips caused a accelerated reaction inside the reactor core, and it caused it to explode. And they had 8 of these. So
Okay.
that was one reactor that caused all of that. And Chernobyl had 2 more that were actually still up and operational till the mid 2000s. Um, but it's, I mean,
Well, we
it
still
was
have
like,
reactors today
and
that, because reactors are supposed to be checked every 31, 34 years, and we still have some today that we haven't
they're
checked in a
rated
long
for
time.
30 years.
Yeah, but we have ones that are way
Yeah,
past
they're,
that. So what's to stop another Chernobyl incident from happening?
well, here's the thing is the ones that are rated for 30 years, um, they're just better built. You know what I mean? It's the engineering and thought process that went into these reactors that are still going.
Well, who's to stop some
But
hairy dipshit like me to accidentally mess up? Like, I sent you that article about the guy that was exposed to radiation thing. He was
yeah,
trying his best to contain it. He's not the first one. There's another one called, I think his name is Kelly something. He it's like the same type of incident. What happened was he was hearing all the something had spilled into wherever the reactor core where he was at, and he thought his best as a
mm-hmm,
person, I'm going to save all these
mm-hmm,
people, everybody else out there, from getting this exposure to this thing. And he tried to shut off the
mm-hmm,
thing mid of its like kind of transfusion thing. Next thing you know, this
mm-hmm,
thing, as he pulled one of these levers, had shot straight up like so much radiation into his body where it was like 50 times the lethal dose. He went
mm-hmm,
outside. I read the account of him. A coworker had, like, it was snowing outside. He went out in his, like, took his shirt off and everything, literally was standing there and steaming. And the coworker ran
mm-hmm.
up to him, and from the coworker's account was like, hey, he was screaming like he was on fire. But I
Yeah,
couldn't touch him because as I would get close to him, it would feel like my skin was burning. Like he was that
yeah,
so consumed with radiation. They took him to the hospital, and they realized when they were giving him the IV or trying to put blood
mm-hmm,
into his body, everything they're getting out of him was black and like just like ash. His bone
yep.
marrow had turned into dust, and there was no way
Cooks
to
you from the
save this
inside
guy.
out. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So what they did was they were like, there's no way we can save this guy, but they gave his wife false hope. They told her that there's a way we can try. We're working our hardest, but really they were using him as research, like in Operation Paperclip and the Nuremberg trials when we forgave
Mm-hmm.
those people. He was just, they were the doctors
Mm-hmm.
and everybody was just using him as research, knowing he was going to die, but just testing and see how long they could keep him alive for.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things too. I mean, but that's how I hate to say it, but that's how like medical. That's how they learn. It's not every day that you get these people in there. You know what I mean? And like, you know, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, I guess. And I'm not condoning these actions by any mean, but I mean, I just that's you hear about this all the time. I feel like I read just pages and pages and throughout when humans are humans, that's what we've done.
We're curious
You know what I
people.
mean? And someone's got to. I mean, I'm an organ donor, so I mean, if
I
I
would rather
pass,
have a bullet in my head than sit there in pain that long.
not having bodies in there, and it's one of those things where you're like, oh, good, you did what? Oh,
That's why I
all
say
right, but
this stuff isn't to fear the government. Any of the stuff that you learn throughout history, this stuff, I was like, I wish they would just understand that. Like, if the government was more open about a lot of the stuff that they do, like a lot of the
mm-hmm,
stuff that goes on, I feel like people would be like, okay. But I think it's more not about being fearful. I think it's on the aspect of like, it's a world. We're trying our best as people right now to discover what that is. We don't know shit as much as we might think we do. Yeah, we've got the
yeah,
space time and we've got able to go up to Mars or something like that, but it's like we don't have our
mm-hmm,
oceans discovered. We don't have our mind discovered. We have so many things that is so that's why when conspiracy theorists, whenever you say that, somebody looks at them like they're mentally insane. It's like cut off half of what they say. When they're ranting about the frogs being gay, and then they start saying something like, then there's the flat earth. That's where you cut the line. What about the frogs? Let's go and focus in on that. It's what Joe Rogan was trying to do. Like,
mm-hmm,
focus on one thing. They have a chemical that they release as a pesticide that can change a frog's gender. All right,
mm-hmm,
that's a lot different than the way you said it. You said it in a way more ridiculous way.
mm-hmm. But it's funny that you said that too. But in nature, that exists naturally. There are certain animals, especially in the ocean and the aquatic being, that actually can change their sex as a defense mechanism.
Seahorse.
And there's one more, I forget what it is too. There's one more that actually, not just a seahorse, but I think there's either one or two more that actually do that. So I mean, for them to check it on the frogs, I mean, I guess there's plenty of them, so have at it. But
Look, I'm a boy
I
that
wouldn't
watched
want it to do
a
it to my
little
dog
tad.
or anything.
I'm a little boy that watched a tadpole grow into a frog. So that hits close to home with me where I'm like, I don't want that to happen to frogs.
No, I'm the same way with caterpillars, man. I had a bunch of them, and I waited. I guess I fed them, and they went into the cocoon and went through the metamorphosis, and I watched each one of them turn into butterflies. So,
How long do you think
I wouldn't want
until
them to do that to the butterfly population. That would hit home to me.
have you ever seen the movie Men Who Stare at Goats?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's based on a real government project, Project Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder,
Mm-hmm.
how far do you think it is until we start working on ourselves to be able to enhance our own like mind capabilities? Because I feel like I've talked to plenty of psychic people. I've talked to people that seem like they have an extra sense, or and it's not out of the realm of possibility for that to be out there. I look at life like a little bit like a radio. There's different frequencies we're all tuned into. So I'm like, is there a possibility at one point? I'm not saying it's going to be like Halo with the Spartan race, but more like,
Mm-hmm.
is there a program that somebody can sign up to where it can be like Chris Evans as Captain America? Like, let's do some things and maybe enhance human capabilities, not create a new Incredible Hulk, but a better way.
But it's funny that you bring that up too, because Project Jedi was that movie was based on that. Of course, it's watered down Hollywood stuff, but there's actually CIA programs now where they're actually studying children that can bend spoons, and they found out that everyone has the potential to bend a spoon with their mind. It's certain people who know how to access that. Their brains are wired a little bit differently than ours, and this is happening right now.
Okay. this is what I'm fearing right now. Because I always talk about, like, I was in the beginning of this podcast, I was always afraid of the fact I'm afraid robots are going to take over. Not like really in belief
You
of
got to
it,
worry about the robots, man.
but there's a government facility that gets paid $500 million a year, and it's called the Center for Existential Risk, which is the risk of that, like, they're monitoring to make sure nothing turns into like Skynet one day, or technology doesn't advance human capabilities at any point, they don't overthrow us. So I'm like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense that that's there. I'm glad that's there, but I think that should be like that with anything. You started telling kids to bend a spoon. How long until it turns into Stranger Things, where it's Project Hero, where a kid can open up a portal into another dimension and then something gets let in?
Who
Cut it
knows that it
off!
already hasn't happened? Who knows who hasn't already happened? You know what I
Don't
mean?
do
I mean,
this to me.
but it's funny because I mean, like, it's true. I mean, how do you think people come up with these ideas? You know what I mean? Like, they've had to heard something.
I don't want to get to the point where we go a little bit too far, and then next thing you know, it's like that movie, like it's like Bird Box, where there's just this invisible monster that's killing everybody, and I have to keep my eyes closed forever. At that point, I'm
Yeah,
just like, what's the point?
yeah, and no, I agree. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things too that, all right, let's circle back around. Let's make a full circle back to Area 51 and finding these things. Who knows that those things that they're hiding aren't are just us evolved?
Do you think it would be better to find out what's in Area 51, or do you think it would be better to find out what's in the Vatican archive? Because I'm more interested in the archive.
Do you want to know more about your past or future? That's the thing. Do you want to know about more about
Damn,
ourselves? Whoa,
that's a good way to say that too.
whoa, right? That's how my mind works, man. Do you want to know about your past or the future? Uh, I think
Rather,
I think I want to know both. You know what I mean? If I had
that's
to
not how it
choose,
works. That's not how it works.
I think I want to know both. You know what I mean? I
This is
don't.
this is a restaurant answer. We either got Coke or Pepsi. You don't get them both.
Oh, that's true. Um, I think I know about what the past is past, but I think I know kind of know where we're going. So I think mine would be Area 51.
Really? I look at, like, I want to know what is wrong that I've learned. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
that's true too. Because history is based on the victors anyway. So I mean, who knows about all that? But again, all of those are and written in the archives of the Vatican. Are all written by man. So I mean, we're wrong. So I would like to know about what science hasn't stored about. I'm trying to go see some things outer space. That'd be cool. Or have the ability to have these vehicles. I think one of my favorite Joe Rogan podcasts is when he was interviewing Bob Lazar. I mean, that man.
that was one of the first podcasts I did on my other spinoff after I was on like episode 9 of this one. Was I did Bob Lazar, and then a month later he was on Joe Rogan. I'm like, hold on a minute, what's happening? Did I just do
Mm-hmm.
something before Joe Rogan? But I was talking about, like, the Sector 7 stuff was crazy. And then they start talking about like this new chemical element. I think it's called chromium or something like that. It's
Mm-hmm. Element
element
151.
115. Yeah, well, it's 151 or
115.
115,
115.
115. Yeah. And he started talking about that, and I'm like, that's what sucks, is like that's kind of how what they did with Alex Jones is they made him this giant ridiculous thing through media where you can't take anything to standards. But to hear Bob
Mm-hmm.
Lazar have a story that he's been recounting for 30 something years and nothing has changed about it, it's been exactly the same. And then, like, when it did all this stuff, it was getting traction after Joe Rogan and his documentary came out. He had to come
Mm-hmm.
back out and tell people that he lied, and then everyone's like, why? See, he was a liar. It's like, no, it's also the fact that 500,000 people were going to talk about storming Area 51, and he knew
Mm-hmm.
they were all going to get shot in the head.
And I don't think any of his stuff was a lie. I mean, all of it. I mean, to this day, I mean, it still holds water. Everything that man's ever said still holds water. And I think he was just trying to downplay a lot of it because he's been telling the same story for 30 plus years. The same story,
Yeah.
and he first came up with George Knapp. George Knapp is the one who does Coast to Coast now. So that's it's funny that he but he's the one the Las Vegas reporter from George Knapp. Um, he's been telling the same story. I mean, he's got documents, he's got interviews. I mean, his story never changed, never. You know what I mean? And it's hard to prove his credentials, but I mean, it's hard to make people like that disappear. But I think he did what he had to do because, yeah, he was feared for his life. But I mean, the man actually did work there, and he did work at Los Alamos, and he did, it's all provable.
Do you think that there are aliens out there? And do you think that like if if they even came here before? Because everyone always brings that up, and I'm like, it makes sense. Because like I hate fucking keep saying Joe Rogan, because then people are like, oh, toss it out the window.
When people ask you that, you need to tell to them, does a bear fucking shit in the woods?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
it's
it's
they
it's
met well.
kind of silly to think that there isn't. You know what
Well,
I mean? Like,
even Reagan hinted at it, was like, I don't want us to think that we're the only ones in this universe. To think that would be stupid. We need to understand that there might be something else out there and be prepared for it, which is when he
hmm
established a lot of like the, monitoring for unidentified flying objects. But then during this whole thing, they came out about a lot of like UFOs and all these things, the tic tac and all
hmm
this, and nobody really focused on it, which was a perfect time to slide that in there. But
no, I don't think they're sliding into there. And I mean, I hate to get my tinfoil hat on there, but let's bring it back to Operation Paperclip to Werner von Braun, the former Nazi who started
space program.
the space program. And he actually, there's a prediction that he's put out there that a lot of it's come true, and some of his predictions stem from the Vietnam War to invading the Middle East. His final prediction that hasn't come to light yet is the fake alien invasion. Now, are they going to have a fake alien invasion? But I feel like we've been seeing a lot of more and more about UFO like that on mainstream media to get people maybe more acclimated to the idea of, hey, to make it more normalized. So when this day does happen, it's not, oh my God, it's not Jorson, it's not World of Worlds anymore. You know what I mean? People are jumping out of windows. I think they're trying to, if you've seen a lot more, there's a lot more in Hollywood. There's been a lot more in the news, mainstream news, not just,
Like a
tabloids.
slow, like dip your toes into the water. Let's ease them
They're
in.
getting people more acclimated. That's what it is.
I think with Hollywood though, what sucks is I think everything they show is so like extremely different. I'm glad they're all covering their bases now, because before
Mm-hmm.
it was always tiny little green men. I'm like, who's to say that's what they're like? I would fucking hate to find out that aliens are the ones from like the movie Alien, the giant ones. Like I'm
Oh,
okay
yeah.
with that planet never getting to us, that race. I would like one that would be like, "What's up, bro? Do you mind if I probe you a little bit?" And you're like, why do you want to know what's in my ass? I'm like, no, that's not how we do probes, bro. It's a thermometer in your ear. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds a lot easier than what I was thinking. Hollywood has shown us that she liked the ass. He's like, no, everybody gets that wrong. Why?
You're exactly right. It's just it's who knows what to believe. But I will say to you though is about Hollywood and aliens. So one of my favorite ones is Steven Spielberg's Close Encounter of the Third Kind. And I think I put two and two together when I first watched the Bob Lazar documentary. And you know how he talks about this the hand thing that you put, that's how you entered the
Yeah.
the room. So he, in the documentary, he actually shows a design of that and a picture of that, and it's the same thing that Steven Spielberg put in his movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that actually was made 15 years before Bob Lazar worked at Area 51.
Do you think maybe the government's just looking at all the movies that are coming out? Like, that's a good fucking idea. Dark Mirror. Let me write that down.
Or it's one of those things where, maybe they're like, oh, you should make it like this. This is more realistic. You know what I mean?
When I was, like I said, mentioning that
Because they have
episode,
censoring.
well, mentioning that episode with what do you call it? Joe Rogan with Alex Jones on the newest one, when he was mentioning climate change, he was talking about how carbon dioxide is literally terraforming the earth, not for human life, but for plant life. Plants are
hmm
becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And from talking to people that are doing a lot of gardening, they're talking about how each year their peppers keep getting bigger. So
hmm
maybe it's a way of terraforming the planet, which they kind of hinted at was the fact of, if there are aliens, maybe this is what they're kind of waiting for. They're waiting for this whole planet to be terraformed. They want to see this growth of this race or whatever. If we were experiment project from them, it's like playing Spore. You watch this thing grow into something, and I was like, it makes sense. I mean, it seems like it's going to end up like we're all kind of really fighting each other. we're not really like we're doing some amazing things, but we're never at this like harmony state. So it would make sense that we're missing a key features. That's why I think we're not ready for aliens. Is the whole aspect of where we don't even know what's going on in our own lives right now.
No, I totally agree. But let's just say on the flip side of that coin, that maybe it's the Earth of all the wood that we have chopped down and the rainforests that we chopped down. Maybe they're coming back more resilient anyway. Maybe it's the Earth trying to fix itself.
That's a good theory too.
You know what I mean? So I mean, this planet goes through cycles. It's already proven that we do.
That's what scared
So
me about the happening. I was like, yeah, it's just gonna be the plants are gonna start releasing the chemical. Like we're over your shit. Now it's time to lay in front of a lawnmower.
it's the red forest. It's the red forest in Chernobyl. I mean, nature has proven to us that no matter what we've done, that comes back.
There's a red forest in Chernobyl.
Oh yeah, it's kind of cool. The radiation did something with the leaves that now it's like this cool color, and it kind of mutated this forest in a way.
So great for the Instagram, but bad for the environment.
I don't think it was bad for the like the nature's adapting.
Oh.
That's what it's doing. It's overtaking these buildings again. The horses, there's this specific herd and specific breed of horses that are actually coming back. I mean, they do have health problems, but they've come. Their numbers are increasing actually. So I mean, it's nature learning to live in a man-made world.
It's kind of like when I was watching Bill Nye, and he was the newer version, not like the old school kid version, the one where he's actually talking to everyone as adults, and he's like,
Yeah.
imagine if man, like everything about man just was gone, and all these things that we built have been left here. He's like, it would still be here. And then they found like a playground that hadn't been like played at for like 50 something years, and there was just overgrowth of plants wrapped all the way around
Hmm.
it, but this metal material was still there. It hasn't broken down yet. He said this is going to be
Hmm.
here for another couple hundred years before this thing starts breaking down, but plant life will survive way longer than we will unless this
Hmm.
earth is hit with like a global explosion. Things will grow and things will survive to outlast us.
Hmm. And it's one of those things, it's just I feel like it is more of the planet. It's a self preserving mechanism. That's my take on it. Like things are getting bigger and this and that. Like, but everything's so genetically modified anyway to withstand climates, lack of water, too much sun, hot, cold. You know what I mean? Like, who knows that those seeds in general are already GMO'd, and not the bad GMOs because not all GMOs are bad,
Yeah.
but some GMOs actually help the farmer, when it comes to, I'm not all about the pesticide inside my thing, but I'm all about I got you. So I'm all about, uh, thinking that it's about it's preserving itself. I can't get my tongue out of my
It's the
mouth today.
preservation of the plants. I wrote
That's
up
exactly
research.
right.
Yeah.
But to bring you back to those bigger peppers, could it be a GMO?
Well, they're growing them naturally through their own process of just putting them in there and watering them.
But
So they're not using any enhanced chemicals to talk about the process of them getting bigger. Unless they're well, it's the process of them. They're just getting the peppers seeds online or something, and then they're planting them in the ground. So they're not adding miracle grow and fertilizer to it though.
where are the seeds coming from?
From an
The
online
seeds are
seller.
automatically okay. So, all right, we let's bring you to Monsanto. Monsanto is the bigger distributor of corn on this planet, and Monsanto seeds are actually one-time use. So, let these farmers who actually buy these Monsanto seeds are guaranteed crops because they'll grow, but they automatically kill off themselves after their harvest. They cannot be reharvested again. So, seeds can be, genetically modified from the very beginning. So it's where these seeds are coming from. That's the problem too. They're not, who knows what, I like. So you have to sit there and figure out where these seeds come from. Like I said with Monsanto, the one-time use corn, they have pesticides built in and stuff like that. So it's not just, oh, I got these seeds off of Amazon or this or that. It's about being I
It's
use the
not
word
some bunk
organic.
ass sea monkeys. That's what's up.
It's exactly right. You know what I mean? Like, who knows where these companies that you get your seeds from are actually genetically modifying these to make it easier for Joe Schmo to grow or to make them bigger to yield. So it's not just adding Miracle Grow in this. Now, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about GMO, genetically modified seeds, and
I mean, I'm not
we,
against GMOs at all. I stand with them on one thing. When I did a research paper on them, I don't think it's cool to have pesticides on your food, but I see where there's a benefit to it in
mhm,
growing it in places that you're not able to grow a whole lot of food in abundance. Being able to manipulate a
agreed.
crop like its genetics to be able to plant into Africa so we can stop starvation is fucking amazing. And also being able to, instead of, you see all those crop spraying things going around, to be able to stop animals and insects from eating these crops, making the
Hmm.
leaves taste different. I think that's awesome. I mean, I come across there's a 4 pound apple at Harris Teeter. This thing is freaking this big, dude. I swear
Yeah.
to you, it's huge. That's GMO, but it says organic on it. I'm like, all organics have GMOs too.
Yep. Exactly right. Just because they didn't put any pesticide on this and that, like I feel like organics are kind of a sham, in its own way.
I'll take
You
an
just
organic fruit or GMO fruit over a fucking McDonald's cheeseburger any day of the week.
all day, yeah, and that's where if you're really that concerned about what you put in your body, I mean, you can't get any meat from can't get any meat from the supermarket. You might as well go down to your local farm and buy meat that way. You know what I mean? This is America. You know what I mean? Like our FDA just kind of
It's
yeah, that'll do. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it's
will it kill anybody
America
yet?
and
No,
it's
okay.
questionable. It's America
Mhm.
and it's questionable.
Yeah, we all have plastic in our body. We can find plastic in our body now.
Are you
That's how
serious?
much plastic is in there. Now we have plastic in us.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, man.
Some
Yeah,
part Ken doll?
you could be. I mean, it's like this. It's like a grain of salt, but it could be found in our bodies now. So I mean, plastic's that relevant. So it's important, especially we look at that with our new baby. You know what I mean? We're not going to use the same kind of crazy plastic cups and stuff like that we've used. That we've kind of put some thought into, you know, what our kids have, and even our oldest. You know what I mean? What kind of milk? What kind of milk do you got? I don't want a bunch of milk.
Artificial stuff.
Exactly right. So I mean, it's important.
I did that experiment. I had a Arnold Palmer's tea in my fridge and I just never drank it. It just didn't taste right when I had the first sip. So I just, every time I opened up the fridge, I just didn't reach for it. I reached for something else. I left it in there for like a month and a half and then I decided to dump it out. And you saw all the artificial flavoring at the bottom, like
Hmm.
a thick, like tar.
Syrup.
And it got
Yeah.
stuck in the drain. Like it was stuck
Hmm.
in the little catcher for it. And I was like, that could have been inside of me just if I decided, hey, it's a beautiful day. Let me take a sip.
Yeah. Well, that also too. I mean, there's a lot of corn syrup, and that's what happens with corn syrup. But our stomach acid's a lot more powerful than what you think too.
Yeah, but how long until that ends up being a big factor if that's going to cause something not to work properly?
That's true. That is true.
That's why I look at like everything that's going on. Like I recently had a gastrointestinal problem and then I started hearing how common it was. Like I thought it was a rare thing to have something like this. And I started hearing people like, yeah, I got a piece of my intestine taken out. I got a gastrointestinal issue myself. I got IBS. And it's like, how
Hmm.
many people now are suffering from intestinal issues compared to back in the day when we didn't use so many artificial flavorings and things?
Exactly right. Now it'd be interesting to see what generation that is. Is it the kids that grew up in the '90s and had the crazy McDonald's Happy Meals, or is it the generation that actually gave a shit to what's in their body?
I'm okay if it means that I got cancer from all those Happy Meal things as a kid because I love the damn Neopets they used to give me.
They were really cool.
They
The
were.
or the cool buckets that I used to give you during Halloween. I mean, that was cool.
That's what I'm saying. Lure us in with something good. Nowadays, it's all like. Honestly, I'm surprised they haven't canceled the whole male or boy or girl toy thing. Like that's still an
Hmm.
option to ask for. I'm like, now they just got to start giving out like different types of like coupons. Like here's a coupon to take your family to Six Flags, like Coke did back in the day.
Hmm. I
Promotion.
100% agree with you. You need to entice us with adventure, not just material things. Come on.
Send us
When's the
in.
next Beanie Baby coming out, man?
That's what I'm saying. Bring back the America collection. That was amazing.
Or when they used to give you glasses. Do you remember that?
I remember when they used to have like the Burgermeister and all that on there. He's not there anymore
They used to give out like actual nice glasses. Like you collect them all.
because they cared about you. Now
Like
they're just
we're
like, you're gonna take this shit and eat it.
shove it down your throats.
I was like, that's why I didn't like about Sonic, somebody rolling stuff out to you. I want to see like the one person's having a bad day that just drops it right in front of your car, like fucking pick it up and eat it, pig. And just skates away. I'm like, oh, it hurts even more because they skate away. You're like, no.
They called me a pig. Yep.
Well, John, dude, I
But
appreciate
you
you for
can't do
doing the
that now. I
podcast,
mean,
brother.
of course, man. It was my pleasure. Please, I'm not, you got the morning shifts here, so you got to call me on the weekends,
I got you.
But I mean, it's been fantastic. You're great.
Hey, please promote your page, promote your podcast, man. And also, if you want to promote your wife's again, you've promoted everybody but yourself. So you might as well do a little bit of shameless plugging.
Listen, man, I'm weird. Yeah, it's I'm. It's not about me. I just do mine for fun. So it's. But if you do want to find me, I'm on Twitter. Question everything. I don't know my handle because I kind of fucked that up when I started that. But it's like question numbers. I don't know. Just find me on question everything. You can find me up there. Check out my wife's too. Hers is fantastic. So this is me trying. It's fantastic. So I mean, I can't say enough about that. And anybody who wants to get on mine and shoot the shit with me one day, I'm man, I'm all ears. So there's nothing off the table, and there's nothing weird or strange about any of this. Because
I want to talk Willowbrook State School.
okay,
You're gonna have to Google that, but let me tell you, it's gonna blow your mind.
let's do it, man. I mean, like I said, I when I tell people to choose their subject, I don't know a thing about it sometimes, and I just listen to them, and
It's a,
I
it's
I
a,
question it.
it's a school that was for like back in the day when they didn't know mentally challenged people, they didn't understand what that was. Parents would drop off these kids that suffered from this at a school, and this school would inject these people who have mental retardation with hepatitis and all these terrible things, experimenting like Tuskegee style stuff, but in
Mm-hmm.
our own place. And I'm like, oh my God, like I saw the pictures and I saw everything from it, and it was so heartbreaking. I'm like, that
It's
sucks because
terrible, man.
when I was in school, my teachers thought I was mentally challenged because they didn't know what ADHD was.
Mm-hmm. Can only imagine. You should also look up too the Kellogg, the doctor. He was a doctor, but
Who
the
invented
guy who made
cornflakes to prevent
yeah,
masturbation?
yep.
Yeah,
It's just stuff like that, man. It's
that's why
just
I'm a
we're.
Honey Smacks fan.
That's why I eat the cocoa pebbles.
I just picked the
I'm a dude.
marshmallows out of the Lucky Charms, and that's all I want.
That sounds good too. They come out with just marshmallows, man. So I can't wait for that. I think that's already maybe came out already,
I saw
but
the best ad ever by Oreo. It was bridging both sides together in harmony, and it was an ad of like this one stuffed animal trying to get Oreo or trying to get milk out of a thing for his Oreos, and it was the
uh-huh.
donkey and the elephant, the Republican and Democrat party getting together to help. They were fighting, but then they started to help each other, then they all sat down and ate Oreos. I'm like, that's what we need.
It's exactly right. We need more positivity and more human compassion in this world than anything. I mean,
And more chocolate Oreos.
well, I was a big fan of the 50-year anniversary of the Apollo mission to the moon, where they actually had the marshmallow inside of it.
I thought you were going to toss out like vanilla wafers.
No, man, it's just Oreo. It's the greatest Oreos ever made.
At least you didn't say
Uh
ginger snaps. Jeez.
no, no. What do you mean? This
What do you
is
want to
no.
torture over a snack?
I got some class, man. Come on now.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Out of the Blanket. Stay tuned for our next episode.